Hello friends, come on in, it's time for story time again. Not the kind that's for kids, they've got plenty, let us have something. In our crazy adult lives, we can't have fun if we try. So have a seat there on the floor, settle in to hear some stories. Hi everybody, welcome to Storytime. Today we're going to read an essay by the book When You Were Engulfed in Flames from the good people at Little Brown Publishing Company. The story is called April in Paris. It might be particularly relatable right now. It's about David Sedaris. I don't know if he's bored at home. I think he's just kind of an odd guy, and he had some fun with some spiders that he had in his house. But it might be something you find yourself doing with all the time you have at home. After hearing this, it might inspire you to get up to some spider shenanigans in your house. So I'm going to read this to you today. I'm accompanied by my animal friends, Sky and Lilu, and Milkshake. So they're going to listen to the story today along with you, and we might cut to some shots of them enjoying the story throughout. So here we go. This is April in Paris by David Sedaris. While watching TV one recent evening, I stumbled upon a nature program devoted to the subject of making nature programs. The cameraman's job was to catch a bird of paradise in full display, so he dug himself a hole, covered it with branches, and sat inside it for 3 weeks. This was in New Guinea, where the people used to wear sexy loincloths, but now stand around in t-shirts that say, "Cowboys do it with chaps," and "I survived the 2002 IPC Corporate Challenge weekend." One villager might wear a pair of gym shorts and then add a fanny pack or a sun visor with the name of a riverboat casino stitched onto the brim. I suppose that these things came from a relief organization. Either that or a cruise ship went down, and this was what washed up on shore. I'll wager that quite a few sun visors found their way to Southeast Asia after the tsunami. One brutal news story after another, and it went on for weeks. The phone numbers of aid organizations would skitter across the bottom of the TV screen, and I recall thinking that if they wanted serious donations, they should have shown a puppy. Just one was all it would have taken. It could have been sleeping, its belly full of the malnourished children we'd seen on the previous night's broadcast, but none of that would have mattered. People who had never before contributed to charity emptied their pockets when a Cocker Spaniel was shown standing on a rooftop after Hurricane Katrina. What choice did I have, they asked. That poor little thing looked into the camera and penetrated my very soul. The eyes of the stranded grandmother, I noted, were not half as piercing. There she was, clinging to a chimney with her bra strap showing, and all anyone did was wonder if she had a dog. I'd hate to think there's a Scotty in her house, maybe trapped on the first floor. What's the number of that canine rescue agency? Saying that this was everyone's reaction is, of course, an exaggeration. There were cat people too, and those whose hearts went out to the abandoned reptiles. The sight of an iguana sailing down the street on top of a refrigerator sent a herpetologist friend of mine over the edge. She seems to be saying, "Where's my master?" he speculated. Here it is, time for our daily cuddle, and I'm stuck on the SS Whirlpool. I've often heard that anthropomorphizing an animal is the worst injustice you can do. That said, I'm as guilty as anyone. In childhood stories, the snail grabs her purse and dashes out the door to put money in the meter. The rabbit cries when the blue jay makes fun of her buck teeth. The mouse loves her sister, but not that way. And we think, they're just like us. Certain nature shows only add to this misconception, but that, to me, is why they're so addictive. Take Growing Up Camel, a program my friend Ronnie and I watched one evening. It was set in a small, privately owned zoo somewhere in Massachusetts. The camel in question was named Patsy, and the narrator reminded us several times over the next 50 minutes that she had been born on Super Bowl Sunday. While still an infant, the football stadium probably not even cleared yet, she was taken from her mother. Now she was practically grown, and as the commercials neared, the narrator announced a reunion. Coming up, the camels reconcile after their long separation. In the next segment, the two were reintroduced, and the grumpy old mother chased her daughter around the pen. When the opportunity arose, she bit Patsy on the backside, and pretty hard, it seemed to me. This was the camels not getting along, and it wasn't too terribly different from the way they acted when they did get along. When the next break approached, the narrator hooked us with, "Coming up, a tragedy that changes Patsy's life forever. I'd have to put my money on an amputated leg, but it turned out to be nothing that dramatic. What happened was that the mother got bone cancer and died. The veterinarian took it hard, but Patsy didn't seem to care one way or the other. And why would she, really? All her mom ever did was hassle her and steal her food. So wasn't she better off on her own? The zookeepers worried that if left all alone, Patsy would forget how to be a camel, and so they imported some company, a male named Josh and his girlfriend Josie, who were shipped in from Texas. The final shot was of the three of them, standing in the sunshine and serenely ignoring one another. So that's what became of the little camel who was born on Super Bowl Sunday, Ronnie said. She turned on the light and looked me in the face. Are you crying? She asked. I told her I had an ash in my eye. Growing up camel had its merits, but I think I prefer the more serious type of nature show, the kind that follows its subject throughout the wild. This could be a forest, a puddle, or a human intestinal tract. It makes no difference. Show me a tiger or a tapeworm, and I'll watch it with equal intensity. In these sorts of programs, we see the creature's world reduced to its basic components: food, safety, and reproduction. It's a constant chain of desperation and heartache, the gist being that life is hard, and then it ends violently. I know I should watch these things with an air of detachment, but time and again I forget myself. The show will run its course, and afterward I'll lie on the sofa, shattered by the death of a dodo or a gwib, one of those four-letter antelope type things that's forever turning up in my crossword puzzles. Apart from leaving me spent and depressed, such programs remind me that I am rarely, if ever, alone. If there's not an insect killing time on the ceiling, there's surely a mite staring out from the bath towel, or a parasite resting on the banks of my bloodstream. I'm reminded, too, that however repellent, each of these creatures is fascinating and worthy of a nature show. This was a lesson I learned a few summers back in Normandy. I was at my desk one afternoon writing a letter when I heard a faint buzzing sound, like a tiny car switching into high gear. Curious, I went to the window, and there, in a web, I saw what looked like an angry raisin. It was a trapped fly, and as I bent forward to get a closer look, a spider rushed forward and carried it screaming to a little woven encampment situated between the wall and the window casing. It was like watching someone you hate getting mugged. 3 seconds of hardcore violence, and when it was over, you just wanted it to happen again. It's hard to recall having no working knowledge of the Tigenaria dulica, and that's what I was back then. Greenhorn with a third-rate field guide. All I knew was that this was a spider, a big one, the shape of an unshelled peanut. In color, it ranged from russet to dark brown, the shades alternating to form a mottled pattern on the abdomen. I'd later learn that the Tigenaria can live for up to 2 years, and that this was an adult female. At that moment, though, standing at the window with my mouth hanging open, all I recognized was a profound sense of wonder. How had I spent so much time in that house and never realized what was going on around me? If the Tigenaria barked or went after my food, I might have picked up on them earlier, but as it was, they are as quiet and unobtrusive as Amish farmers. Outside of mating season, they pretty much stayed put, far cry from the California wolf spiders I grew up with. Those have been hunters rather than trappers, big shaggy things the size of a baby's hand. They roamed the basement of my parents' house, and a vote from my sisters that prolonged spine-tingling screams called for movies when the mummy invades the delicate lady's dressing room. Kill it, they'd yell! And then I'd hear a half-dozen shoes hitting the linoleum, followed by a world atlas or maybe a piano stool, whatever was heavy and close at hand. I was put off by the wolf spiders as well, but never thought they were purposely out to get me. For starters, they didn't seem that organized. Then, too, I figured they had their own lives to lead. This was an attitude I picked up from my father, who squashed nothing that was not directly related to him. You girls are afraid of your own shadows, he'd say. No matter how big the thing was, he'd scoot it onto a newspaper and release it outside. Come bedtime, I'd knock on my sister's door and predict that the spider was now crawling to the top of the house, where he'd take a short breather before heading down the chimney. I read in the encyclopedia that this particular breed is known for its tracking ability, and that once it's pegged its victims, almost nothing will stop it. Anyway, good night. They'd have been horrified by the house in Normandy, as most people would, probably. Even before I joined the American Arachnological Society, the place looked haunted, cobwebs sagging like campaign bunting from the rafters and curtain rods. One was in my way, I'd knock it down. That all changed after I discovered that first Tigenaria. April, I called her. After writing her name on an index card and taping it to the wall, my interest spread to her neighbors. The window they lived in was like a tenement building, one household atop another, on either side of the frame. Above April was Marty, and then Curtis and Paula. Across the way were Linda, Russell, Big Chief Tommy, and a sexless little speck of a thing I decided to call Leslie. And this was just one window. Seeing as I'd already broken the number one rule of a good nature documentary, not to give names to your subjects, I went ahead and broke the next one, which was not to get involved in their lives. Manipulating, you would call it, but to my mind, that was a bit too mad scientist. Manipulating is crossbreeding, or setting up death matches with centipedes. What I was doing was simply called feeding. No spider, or at least none that I've observed, wants anything to do with a dead insect, even a freshly dead one. Its food needs to be alive and struggling. Because our house was overrun, I had some time on my hands. I decided to help out. In my opinion, the best place to catch flies is against the window pane. Something about the glass seems to confuse them, and they get even dopier when you come at them with an open jar. Once one was in, I'd screw on the lid and act as though I were shaking a cocktail. The little body would slam against the sides, and his hue went progressively Gandhi on me. I'd remind him that these were pests, disease carriers who feasted upon the dead and then came indoors to dance on our silverware. I mean, come on, I said. You can't feel sorry for everything. The tegenaria build what I soon learned to call horizontal sheet webs, dense trampoline-like structures that are most often triangular and range in size from that of a folded handkerchief to that of a placemat. Once my prey was good and woozy, I'd unscrew the lid and tip the jar toward the waiting spider. The fly would drop, and after lying still for a moment or two, begin to twitch and rouse itself, a cartoon drunk coming to after a long night. What the F? I imagined it saying. Then it would notice the wings and foreheads of earlier victims. I gotta get out of here. A whisper of footsteps off in the distance. Just as the fly tasted futility, the monster was upon him. And cut, I would yell. This spectacle became addictive, and so, in turn, did catching flies. There were days when I'd throw a good 3 dozen of them to their deaths. This at the expense of whatever else I was supposed to be doing. As the spiders moved from healthy to obese, their feet tore holes in their webs. Running became a chore, and I think their legs started chafing. By this point, there was no denying my emotional attachment. There were nights that first summer when I'd get out of bed at 3 a.m. and wander into my office with a flashlight. Everyone would be wide awake, but it was always April that I singled out. If I thought about her 100 times a day, it seemed only fair that she thought about me as well. My name, my face. I didn't expect these things to register, but in the way that a body feels the warmth of the sun, I fully imagined that she sensed my presence and missed it when I was away. That's all right, I'd tell her. It's only me. Often I'd take out my magnifying glass and stare into the chaos that was her face. Most people would have found it grotesque, but when you're in love, nothing is so abstract or horrible that it can't be thought of as cute. It slayed me that she had 8 eyes, and that none of them seemed to do her any good. They were more like decoration, really. A display of beads crowded atop her chelicera. These were what she used to grip her prey. If you looked at her the right way, you could see them as a pair of enormous buck teeth. This made her appear goofy rather than scary, though I'd never have said so in her presence. For a tegenaria, she was quite attractive, and I was glad to see that Principal Hodges shared my view. He was a freshly molted adult male who traveled from the other side of the room and spent 6 days in her inner sanctum. Why Marty Curtis or Big Chief Tommy didn't mate with April is a mystery, and I put it on a list beside other nagging questions, such as, what was Jesus like as a teenager? And why is it you never see a baby squirrel? As the summer progressed, so did the mysteries. Spiders relocated, both male and female, and I started noticing a lot of spare parts. Forsaken leg or palp lying in a web that used to belong to Paula or Philip or the Right Reverend Karen. Someone new would move in, and as soon as I had tacked up a fresh name card, he or she would vacate without notice. What had once seemed like a fine neighborhood quickly became a dangerous one, the tenants all thuggish and transitory. Maybe April was more highly respected than anyone else in her window unit. Maybe her enemies knew that she was being watched, but for whatever reason, she was one of the few tegenaria that managed to stay put and survive. In mid-September, Hugh and I returned to the city, and at the last minute, I bought a plastic terrarium and decided to take her with me. The April in Paris business didn't occur to me until we were on the train, and I held her container against the window saying, "Look, the Eiffel Tower." Funny, the details will slip your notice until it's too late. The fact, for instance, that we don't really have flies in Paris, at least not in our apartment. Back in Normandy, catching prey had been a breeze. I could do it barefoot in my pajamas. Now I was forced to go outside and lurk around the trash cans in the Luxembourg Gardens. Someone would toss in a disposable diaper and I'd stand a few feet from the bin and wait for the scent to be picked up. Then there'd be the sneak attack, the clattering jar, the little spill of cursing and foot stomping. Had the flies been gathered on a window pane, I would have enjoyed the last laugh, but out in the open, with an audience of French people noting my every failure, my beautiful hobby became a chore. I've been telling myself for months that April needed me, though of course she didn't. An adequate amount of prey stumbled into her web, and she caught it quite capably on her own. That was the case in Normandy, anyway. Now, though, trapped inside a terrarium in a fourth-floor apartment, she honestly did need me, and the responsibility weighed a ton. Tegenary can go without eating for 3 months, but whenever I returned home empty-handed, I could feel a little spider judgment seeping from the plastic box. The face that had once seemed goofy was now haughty and expected. I imagined her saying, I guess I had you figured all wrong. In early October, the weather turned cool. Then the rains came, and overnight, every fly in Paris packed up and left town. April hadn't eaten in over a week, and when, just by chance, I happened upon a pet store and learned that it sold live crickets, blunt little black ones that looked like bolts with legs. I bought a chirping boxful and felt very proud of myself until the next morning, while I learned something no nature show ever told me. Crickets stink. They reek. Rather than dirty diapers or spoiled meat, something definite you can put your finger on. They smell like an inclination, cruelty maybe, or hatred. No amount of incense or air freshener could diminish the stench. Any attempt only made it worse. And it was this more than anything that led me back to Normandy. April and I took the train in late October, and I released her into our old home. I guess I thought she would move back in, but in our absence, her web had fallen to ruin. One corner had come unmoored, and its ragged, fly-speckled edge drooped like a filthy petticoat onto the window ledge. I'm pretty sure it can be fixed, I told her. Before I could elaborate or even say goodbye, she took off running, and I never saw her again. There have been other Tegenaria over the years, a new population every summer, and though I still feed them and monitor their comings and going, it's with a growing but not unpleasant distance and understanding, unlike mammals, spiders do only what they're supposed to do. Whatever drives the likes of April is private and severe, and my attempts to humanize it only move me further from its majesty. I still can't resist the fly catching, but in terms of naming and relocating, I backed off considerably, though you would say not enough. I suppose there's a place in everyone's heart that's reserved for another species. My own is covered in cobwebs rather than dog or cat hair, and because of this, people assume it doesn't exist. It does, though. And I felt it ache when Katrina hit. The TV was on, the grandmother signaled from a rooftop, and I found myself wondering, with something akin to panic, if there were any spiders in her house. The end. Thanks for listening. I hope you and my animal friends enjoyed it. Hey y'all. I have a song for you, what I think is a very relevant and serious song about pants. It's to the tune of Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus. It's called Quarantine Age Dirtbag. It goes like this. I've been staying home, practicing distancing. It's safest we know. Life's tough in this quarantine. The struggle is real. And guys, here's the deal. It's starting to change who I am. We were meant to wear sweatpants this often. I'm a quarantine age dirtbag, baby. Yeah, quarantine age dirtbag, baby. Slumming in casual trousers, maybe with me. Ooh. My friends meet on Zoom. It's a proxy for normalcy, but I'm still in my room. And it's just my top half. They see the camera won't show my shame down below. My sweatpants are just out of view. I'm feeling like I'm a human mullet. My quarantine age dirtbag, baby. Oh yeah, dirtbag. I wonder if my blue jeans miss me. Oh yeah, dirtbag. I wonder if my blue jeans miss me. Man, it's getting old, living in loungewear only lo and behold. My wife's walking over to me, what could this be? A break in the routine. Does it require changing pants? She reaches and takes my hand and tells me, you need to go get some groceries, baby. Put on your blue jeans, don't say maybe. They're sad quarantine age dirtbag days are now through. Oh yeah, dirtbag. I wonder if my sweatpants miss me. Don't be too sad. Oh, I'll be back in 30 minutes. April is National Poetry Month, don't you know? And in honor of that, we have written some haikus for you about life in these modern weirdo times.
Time is bittersweet. Every day is Saturday, but also Monday.
Should I go outside? The hot sky orb is scary. Better stay inside.
When you work at home and you're at home every day is work.
I have to report my new colleagues to HR. These cats are naked.
Enough with dishes. I'm just going to use my hands. They're nature's dishes.
Are you still watching? Netflix asked judgmentally. Hit me again, jerk.
How hard could it be? Famous last words that precede cutting your own hair.
Sit strategically. Use different parts of your butt to avoid soreness.
The 12th night of quarantine. 'Twas the 12th night of quarantine, and all through the house no one was sleeping, not even my spouse. The sink was full, the fridge was bare, and to make matters worse, we could go nowhere. The dogs were all snuggled in their bed, ignorance is bliss, or so it is said. Mama in her yoga pants, and I in my shorts. We could use some fun, not more news reports. What's that? The doorbell? Who does that these days? Amazon delivery. Toilet paper. We're saved. We opened our door and held our trophy aloft with newfound appreciation, so abundant, so soft. Restocked, fed, and showered. It's time for a nightcap. Be safe, be smart. We'll make it through this crap. Embrace this time together. Be kind, don't fight. Happy quarantine to all, and to all a good night.
Everyone knows by now that in order to do your part to socially distance, you need to keep at least 6 feet away from other people. How far is 6 feet exactly? What are you, some kind of distance eyeballer? Should you leave something this serious to guesswork? My friends, I'm happy to report there's a better way. Academy Award-winning actor and America's sweetheart Tom Hanks is exactly 6 feet tall. The next time you find yourself trying to calculate a safe standing distance from you to some other Joe from the burbs, envision the full length of Tom Hanks' esteemed body between you. You are the captain of your own social distancing. but you've got a helpful friend in your bosom buddy Hanks.
Say you're outside of your house. Maybe you just want some air. Maybe you've got mail. Your neighbor starts trying to chat you up. Be smart. Conjure up Hanks on this beautiful day in the neighborhood and ask your buddy next door, "Won't you be my neighbor from over there?" Maybe you want to go for a run. And you notice a bunch of other people in the neighborhood have the same idea. This gaggle of people running amok could turn into an ill-distanced disaster. But not for you. Just imagine everyone's favorite runnin', shrimpin', President Meetin' Hanks character protruding from your chest. Your run will not be like a box of chocolates. You'll know exactly what you're going to get, which is home safely. You may inevitably find yourself at a store. Your card is a nice built-in distancer in this situation, but to make sure you keep the full proper distance, picture Hanks, blasting folks off of your personal bubble, keeping them from boldly going where no responsible distancer has gone before. Houston, we have a problem? Not with all this space. Wherever you are, remember that we live in a three-dimensional, Toy Story-esque world. Make sure to maintain a healthy 6 feet in all directions. To accomplish this, imagine yourself as a giant piano, the kind Robert Loggia would really dig, and that Hanks is shimmy shimmy cocoa popping all around you. Do this, and you won't have to wish to Zoltar for your safety. You'll have taken care of that all by your big boy self. So, when you're out there social distancing, remember this. Hanks, Tom. Hanks for everything.
Hi guys, it's Sarah from Benbrook Library. Tonight we're going to be doing a Storytime craft and making some bookmarks. So please join us.
Tonight we are going to make just a simple bookmark using paper clips and ribbons, yarn, whatever you guys have at home. I've got some liquid glue. It's called Liquid Stitch. You can use it on fabric or ribbons, but you don't have to. I've got a hot glue gun here if you have hot glue, and I'm sure that just plain old Elmer's would work for this too. And I just collected, what I had. I have some yarn. I've got some different colors of ribbon and my paper clips, of course, and then I've got some embellishments, like I found a little piece of a felt flower and some buttons, and this is like an iron-on flower embellishment, but you could use something like that for this. So here's a finished example of what you can do. I had some little ribbon flowers left over from something else, and so I took my ribbons and I tied them on my paper clip, and then I hot glued some fabric to the back just to give it something else to hold on to, and then I finished it off with the little ribbon rosette. And now I've got a paper clip that a bookmark, a paper clip bookmark that won't fall out of my book. So I can mark my page, and I guess that's where I was. Instead of dog-earing my page, I can now put my cute little bookmark there and let those ribbons hang out. And the other one I also made, just as an example, is like a little pom-pom out of yarn. Those are really easy, and I just tied that on. No glue required on that one. So I just tied that one straight on the paper clip. And now I've got my bookmark. That's what it looks like closed. So I thought we could make one together tonight just to show you guys. This is kind of just an unlimited possibility as far as a craft goes. You can do whatever makes you happy on this one. So I think for this next one I'm going to use this blue ribbon. You can see it's pretty skinny compared to, I think that's like 3/8 or something like that. And then this one is even wider, so just whatever you have will work. So I'm going to use this blue, and I think I'm going to use this big button here, and maybe this pink flower. So the first thing I do is I just unwind a bunch of this ribbon, and these are just little sewing scissors, but you can use any scissors that you might have. And then I'm gonna pull this to where I have the ends together, basically in half here, like that. So holding the folded end here, and I'm just gonna cut that, and then I'm gonna do it again. I'm gonna fold my ends together. It's all my loose ends, and it doesn't have to perfectly match up. My purple one didn't, and it looks fine. And then I'm gonna cut the folds again. I would say that's about 8 inches of ribbon, and there's 4 pieces. And the next thing I'm going to do is take one of my paper clips. I like the bigger paper clips, but you can also use the smaller ones. I used the smaller ones for both of my examples, so those will work as well. But for this one, I'm going to use the big paper clip because I have this big button here. So I'm going to take the ribbons and I'm going to fold them in half again. And instead of cutting that loop, I'm going to send those loops through the paper clip. And then once I have those like that, I'm going to push the ends through and just pull them through like that. And then just kind of work it to where it is pulled tightly at the end. And then this ribbon wants to loosen up a little bit. I'm not sure why. But with my small purple one, I did the same thing. I got the ends and I just tied a knot. So that gives you another little bit of a surface to glue on. And then I just kind of pull it down again. And if you notice, I put the ribbons at the end where it's the single loop of metal, where this is the double loop. Like this is the double loop side and that's the single. So I put the ribbons at the single so you can still clip on to your pages. So now I've got my ribbons, and you can trim these. Some of these are a little frayed looking, and I always cut them at an angle. And just whatever length you think looks good. So just kind of lay it out and look. I've got some shorter pieces on the right side there, so I think I might make these a little shorter. So now I can move on to my embellishment, and I was just gonna lay it out before I glue anything here and see how that looks. I may just, it lays flatter on that side, so I think that's where I'll glue. I'll just kind of play with it until you like it, and I'm gonna go ahead and glue that down. We'll see how this looks. I'm using the hot glue, but again, I think Elmer's would work just fine if you just have some school glue. Might take a little longer to dry. my button on top. And just let that dry. And I may have to go back in and put some more hot glue in here just to make sure it's not going to pop off on me. There we go. So just go around your house and find some ribbon or yarn and buttons, or it could even be like a cardstock if you wanted to use a cardstock for that part. Oh, I got a little bit of glue on me. Hot glue just kind of picks right off. So, and the other glue dries clear, so you don't have to worry about that. But you just find some paper clips, and you can, and the kids can do this with you, or you can make this for just you. So this is kind of an anybody craft that you can do. That one doesn't go down quite as far as the others because the button is so big, but you can just play with this idea and something to do in quarantine, and you don't have to run out and buy a bunch of supplies. You probably have some of this stuff hanging out around the house left over from other projects, and we'd love to see what you do with it. So maybe post pictures in the comments. Thanks, guys.